right. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here to expose the propaganda, the mainstream media. We're here to tell you about the stuff that they won't tell you about. Or when they do, they skim over it. They just give you a taste, but they hide the truth from you. Over the weekend, this Bundy Ranch thing, you know, the mainstream media was forced and obligated to cover it. You know why? I'm going to tell you why. Because places like the Drudge Report made it front page news. And there are, you know, the Drudge Report has, I think, 11 billion hits a year. There is nobody bigger than the Drudge Report. Not all of the news organizations combined have that kind of traffic. Nobody's bigger than the Drudge Report. And Matt Drudge is a genius at writing headlines. And all the Drudge Report is a website where they take and aggregate web stories. So they go out there and they find all these different stories, and they put them all in one place where, you know, you don't have to go and search through 150 websites every morning to find all the stories that are happening in the news. Now, they don't cover them all, of course, but they have these 3 columns, and you can basically go, and they update it constantly. So, you know, from about 5 o'clock in the morning onward, it's constantly refreshing, and there's news stories put up and so forth and so on. If you're not monitoring Drudge Report, and by the way, you can do so on your personal tracking device. You know, that thing issued to you by the NSA. I mean, Verizon. I mean, yeah, you get it. There's a little app that you can get for it called Drudge Report. And I'm telling you, the Drudge Report is what put this on the map. That and organizations like Alex Jones. And, I know there's a lot of people that don't like Alex Jones. I don't really care whether you do or you don't. What I can tell you is this. He was out there in the forefront of this thing, and he's got resources that I don't have, that most of these other small alternative medias don't have. He's got, you know, a staff of people. He's got researchers. He's got access to infrastructure we don't have. God bless him for doing it, because you know what? I don't care whether you think he's a controlled opposition. I hear everything under the sun. Oh, you know, he's for the Jewish League, and I don't really care about any of that. I only care about a patriot and how they perform. That's all I care about. That's it. I don't care. Listen, if his motivation is bad, but he was able to produce and provide coverage that nobody else could really provide and produce like that, and wake up literally millions and millions upon millions of Americans, then I'm all for it. Because I'm only interested in results. I'm not saying that the ends justify the means. I am saying that's the mantra of traitors and statists and elitists. I am saying that Alex Jones was able to expose these stories and articles in a way that I couldn't have done. And he brought it to the forefront, and Matt Drudge then took it and threw it out there for all the world to see. God bless him for doing so. Because ABC, CBS, NBC, Communist News Network, MSLSD, Fox News, none of them were talking about it. Oh yeah, it got a little minor blip on a few radar screens. But none of them have been talking about this Harry Reid thing and how he's been the motivator behind this. I'm telling you, alternative media is the solution to our problem here today. And God help us if they ever shut off the internet. Because I'm telling you right now, you'll fall right back into sleep because you'll be inundated with propaganda. I did an article that was picked up by WorldNet Daily going back, I don't know, a year or so ago, about how they changed the rules to allow propaganda to legally be used against Americans. They're using it. They're using it. And even if you think you know that you're being tripped, ignore it. Steer clear of it. It's like being in a room full of pot smoke, right? You may not be smoking it, but if you stand in that room long enough, you're going to get a buzz. All right, this story in this article this morning just blew my mind. This came up over the weekend, and of course it got overshadowed by the Bundy thing, but the Air Marshal Service is got their own Fast and Furious going down. Wait till you hear this thing, man. You want to talk about dirt. This is who these people think they are. They think that it's their right to abuse the privilege of their position, to abuse their power. And that's a physical, actual charge, by the way, abuse of power. This guy, the director of the Federal Air Marshal Service, who holds a federal firearms license, and he holds it for the purposes of the department. The Federal Air Marshal Service and the TSA work hand in hand, and they own a lot of weaponry. And just because they're the government doesn't mean that they don't have to account for those weapons. They've got to keep a logbook. What did we buy? What do we own? How many pistols? How many carbines? How many of them are fully automatic? How many are semi-automatic? Who's got the ammo? Where did we obtain it? They have to keep records of that, right? This guy was using the Marshal's federal firearms license to buy weapons and hand them off to his buddies. I mean, you got to be kidding me. You know, I was put in prison, federal prison, for something far less than that, just for being accused. I did 3 years in a federal prison for a crime I didn't commit that even if I had committed, wouldn't have even come close to what this man has done. The director of the Federal Air Marshal Service is now retiring. And they're going to let him retire. They're going to let him take his pension. No criminal prosecution. You watch and see how this plays out. This was an operation to acquire guns for officials and their personal use using a federal firearms license. His home was raided back in December. Have we heard about this? No. Mainstream media cover-up? Heck yeah. He recently announced his retirement, effective in June. I want to see him in a perp walk with handcuffs. I want to see him in an orange jumpsuit. And I want to see everybody he sold a gun to who knew that the guns were illegally gotten the same way. That's how they treat you. That's how they treat your son. That's how they treat your wife. That's how they treat your husband, your daughter, your father, your mother. To make matters worse, the TSA has come out and said no such raid ever happened. That's a lie. There's sources and documents, and law enforcement has admitted it. So you got a TSA, a federal agency, standing there openly saying to you, no such raid ever happened. Law enforcement and congressional sources have come out and said it happened. What the heck is going on here? He's among several officials who were obtaining weapons for personal use through this scam. There was a whistleblower accusation that involved Federal Air Marshal Supervisor Danny Poulos, or Polus. I don't know how you say it. Sources say the Department of Homeland Security Inspector General is now involved, and possibly the BATF. Possibly, it's their federal firearms license that's being abused to secretly divert guns to federal officials. The TSA officials dispute that those agencies are involved, but acknowledge there is an internal review underway by the TSA Office of Inspection. So what you're telling me here is that the fox is going to judge and investigate the other fox about whether or not the chickens were really eaten. Poulos is on administrative leave. That means he gets full paycheck. He's still got his job. He gets to sit home and surf the web all day and play poker. That's what this is, ladies and gentlemen. Elitists who are sitting here, living here in our nation, abusing the power and authority we have limitedly delegated to them. And when they're caught at it, Nobody does anything. We have 2.5 million men and women in the prisons of this nation. A significant portion of them for committing a crime against nothing other than the state. I get it. You rob a bank, you rob somebody, you assault somebody, you steal property from somebody. Great. Punishable crime. But a crime of no crime, a crime of self-treason because you're a drug addict and you can't put down a crack pipe or a heroin needle. Hey, I can give you thousands of people on Capitol Hill that are criminals every day. The leader and the head of every administrative agency, the vast majority of the executive staff within those agencies, every person in Congress, every person in the judiciary, every judge sitting on a bench, every member of this administrative and the executive. They're all guilty of treason, a far greater crime than selling an 8-ball of crack or cocaine to somebody who willingly wants to buy it to destroy their own life. Self-treason is not the equivalent of national treason. Poulos was using the agency's federal firearms license and his relationship with the gun manufacturer Sig Sauer to obtain discounted and free guns. He then provided them to high-up agency officials for their own personal use. This is according to whistleblower documents that have been obtained by Fox News and other news organizations, and interviews with multiple officials, including congressional officials, with knowledge of the ongoing probe. There was a raid at the guy's house, which the TSA tells you right to your face, and a lie, and a bald-faced lie, never happened. They don't really know whether or not he made any money off the alleged transactions because at this point, what's the mantra we hear? Well, it's under investigation, so we're unable to comment on it at this point. And then the whole idea is, with all the other stuff that's swirling on around us, in 3-6 months, America will forget about it and we'll swipe the whole thing under the rug. TSA officials confirmed on Friday that Bray, one of the people involved, bought weapons from the supervisor, but stressed that he did so legally and had no knowledge that they may have been ill-gotten. I don't understand how you can do that. If he bought them legally, then what? They were transferred out to him in a logbook and he went through a background check like Joe Sixpack is required to do? And if he paid for them, where'd the money go? Now, here's the worst part. They've been hiding it from Congress. Not that we expect any of the traitors up in Capitol Hill to do anything in your benefit, in your best interest, or in the interest of justice, because there is no justice up there. Fire them all. Every single last one of them. Even down to the people you support, like Rand Paul and Ted Cruz and Mike Lee and all the rest of them guys. Fire them all. Because in order to get where they've gotten now, they sold their soul to the devil, and they paid it with your money. They're taking the 30 pieces of silver given to them by lobbyists. Bribery. That's what it is. Lobbying, bribery. The two words are synonymous. You cannot have one without the other. And once they've corrupted themselves to that point, they're as useless to you as teats on a boar hog. The truth is, they've hidden from Congress the fact that this was happening. Congress is supposed to be notified of these types of probes that, according to TSA Administrator John Pistoli, raise grave concern about the claims of possible gross misconduct. Gross misconduct? Listen, the federal prisons are full of men who were accused of violating the Second Amendment or accused of violating a law that violates the Second Amendment. I know. I met a bunch of them in there. Congress is supposed to be notified of these types of probes, but they had gotten no such notification. Hudson says in the letter that the Air Marshal supervisor may have accepted free firearms that were offered because of his employee official position at a time when firearms were being tested by FAMS, that's the Federal Air Marshal Service. So basically, he took bribes of free guns to approve Sig Sauer for the contracts? Is that what you're trying to tell me? They also said in writing that this same employee, the Air Marshal supervisor, this is the highest guy in the group. Tell me the fish doesn't stink from the head to the tail. Quote, may have, in turn, sold or given those firearms to other federal employees, including but not limited to the current director of the Federal Air Marshal Service. You're kidding me. People, is this any different than a guy in the Army who's in charge of an armory and he's lifting weapons out of there? He'd go to prison for that. But this guy who's in charge of a law enforcement agency gets away with it. They stated in this letter that the director's retirement, quote, may be directly related to the investigation. No kidding. But you see, what they're going to do is just like they do with everybody. Lois Lerner in the IRS, that piece of trash in the EPA who was caught using private email accounts to talk about government business so that she could avoid the requirement that those emails be available for subpoena by a court. Right? They all escape justice because they retire in a timely fashion. So they're alerted, hey, you're going to get investigated, so you better retire now while the getting's good. You'll get out, you'll get your full pension, and we'll sweep the whole thing under the rug in about 6 months when the press forgets about it, and they move on to which bikini Kim Kardashian's wearing this week. What a flippin' travesty. He also complained that Congress wasn't notified of any of this. Here's what he says. I am extremely concerned about recent allegations of unethical behavior involving firearms within the Federal Air Marshal Service dating as far back as 2010. 4 years, folks, it's been going on. Just now he's retiring, right? The alleged behavior is unbecoming of any official entrusted with the duty to protect and serve the American public. I'm outraged in the apparent attempt by TSA and the Federal Air Marshal Service to hide this from Congress. TSA needs to come forward and provide clear and complete answers so that we can conduct a thorough and open review of these alleged activities on behalf of the American people. You know something? I'm getting a little tired of hearing that phrase, on behalf of the American people, because Congress has been investigating who? The IRS, the EPA, the list goes on and on and on. Fast and Furious, Eric Holder, the entire Department of Justice. There is no damn justice! Where's there been a perp walk? Who's in prison? Nobody. The spokesperson for the TSA actually has the nerve to say, Director Bray has an exemplary record of public service in the federal government. He has protected presidents, and he has protected the traveling public for nearly 40 years. Really? Well, you know something? The American prisons and the American streets are full of people who are now felons, who lived perfectly good and normal and clean lives, and either made a mistake or crossed a boundary that doesn't even exist before God and before this republic. And they serve prison time, and their lives have been ruined. They didn't get a free pass. Why does he? Of course, the DHS and their Inspector General's office says they cannot comment on investigative matters. You know something? If you're a whistleblower in this government, your name is mud. The constant refrain is we can't discuss or and comment on investigative issues. Since when? If somebody was accused of raping somebody or murdering somebody in the street, they comment all the time. They leak the information. They stand there and get interviewed on camera because they get FaceTime out of it. The prosecutor steps up and he says, "We have this and we have that and we have all kinds of evidence against this man." Where's the media? Where's the spokesperson who's coming forward and saying, "We're under an investigation, but we have mountains of evidence that show this man's guilty"? Hudson's letter says the DHS Inspector General is presently investigating a pervasive personal gun purchasing issue at the Federal Air Marshal Service. The investigators are quietly calling in federal air marshals that purchased weapons from the supervisory agent out of his federal government office and taking photographs of each gun's serial numbers. The document detailing the allegations was written by a whistleblower and circulated among employees. Claims that Poulos at the Washington field office is, quote, under an active investigation by the DHSIG for using the Federal Air Marshal license, federal firearms license, to buy guns from Sig Sauer for the FAM's director, senior TSA and FAM staff, and federal air marshals at a discounted FAM's agency rate. Some of these weapons may not have been fully accounted for, or some stolen. Thus the reason for the DHSIG to want photos of the serial numbers. You see, here's the problem, America. We allow preferential treatment for trash, human trash. They classify themselves as your rulers when they're caught with their hand in the cookie jar, when they're buried and mired in corruption. People like Harry Reid, people like Nancy Pelosi, multi-millionaires. Their entire families, multi-millionaires. From their influence and their abuse of power, and they get free treatment they get a free get out of jail card. IRS's Lois Lerner, the head of the EPA. There's 1,000 of them out there. We can't get justice because there is no justice. Wait till you hear tomorrow's story. I'm prefacing this today. I'm going to talk about this tomorrow. The Army is taking away the Apache attack helicopters from state National Guards. I'm going to cover this tomorrow because I'm telling you, I am so pissed. They're going in and they're taking away their Apache attack copters and they're giving them Blackhawks. Why? Because they're trying to disarm now the National Guard so that when they completely ensnare us within their tyranny, we won't even have the National Guard able to defend us. Who paid for all those helicopters? I'm telling you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is so far gone at this stage in the game. Our nation is so far gone. There is no hope of a political correction here. I'm here to tell you, this has gone beyond anything we can do with a ballot box. Strap up, gear up, gird your loins for battle. You've been listening to America's Voice. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I'm going to give you a Missouri legislative update because it's hammer time in the state of Missouri. I live here, and I am fit to be tied with the delays within our own assembly on getting some of this stuff passed, like the Second Amendment Preservation Act, the Anti-Agenda 21 Pact legislation, Anti-Common Core legislation, which we've passed repeatedly before, and the governor keeps vetoing because he's a traitor. Traitor. Guilty of treason against his state. We'll We'll be back in just a minute. You're listening to America's Voice Now. Find us and follow us on the web at americasvoicenow.org. Send me email at mike@americasvoicenow.org. If you can support us financially, please do. I pay for everything on this program out of my pocket. I promise you the money doesn't go to some squandered, it'll never compensate me for what I've put out of my pocket for this program to keep you educated. We'll be back in just a minute.